Also, yeah. Also, please mute yourself if you're not speaking. My name is Bill Wolverton, and I'm a member of the Action Hub organizing team and your host for this evening. I also live at Pacific Gardens, where we have hosted a Modo car for a number of years. And before that, we hosted a Nanaimo car share co-op car. First, let me begin by acknowledging this meeting is taking place in the unceded traditional territories of the Shunamak, Stunamus, and Shnana as peoples. Tonight, we have a presentation from Sylvain Solaire, the Director of Business Development for Modo. He's been working for the co-op since 2015, and his areas of focus include facilitating collaborations between Modo, property owners, and local governments to integrate car sharing in communities. Sylvain?
The floor is mine. Well, thank you very much, Bill, for the opportunity to chat with you tonight. Hoping to keep it conversational. I have some slides, and hopefully we don't go through all of them. I will ask you in the chat to summarize in 2 sentences max what you're hoping to take away from tonight's conversation. And we will try to hit the mark for everybody. I anticipate that you all have different interests, and you may be looking for different outcomes or different information.
Yeah, I like to see fuel efficient, small, compact cars. More.
Put it in the chat box if you can write.
The chat box.
Chat box, okay.
Just type it down. Okay, I'll give you a couple more minutes. And in the meantime, if you wrote down something, have a look at what the other attendees wrote down, other group members. Okay, interesting. You're right. Okay, I'd like to see. All right. Okay. Harriet, if you feel like writing something down, be welcome. Well, that's pretty diverse. I think we're going to start with a little car sharing 101 for Bill and Kurt. Wano or Modo members. It may be information you already know. Are there other folks in the meeting that are Modo members or have been car sharing with maybe other providers? If yes, just say yes or raise your hand if you have the video. All right, so hearing nothing, hopefully this little car sharing one-on-one will be valuable. All right, do you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. You see it now?
No, we see you. We don't see any screen.
Oh, okay. Let me see this.
There you go.
You go? Okay. So, all right. You should have a slide showing round trip car sharing 101. Is that what you see?
Yes, we do.
Okay, excellent. So there are various forms of car sharing that exist. The one that Modo offers is called round trip. And in short, it's a form of car sharing where you pick up and return the vehicles at the same location. So if you have a car living at the corner in your neighborhood, or even, outside your door, this car is always going to be picked up and returned from there. And that's what we call round trip car sharing, pretty explicit. And so these cars can be booked far in advance, with Modo up to a year in advance. And they are very much an alternative to a personally owned vehicle. And they can be used really for any time of round trips. It's not designed for commuting, but any round trip, grocery shopping, vacation, meetings, whatever errands, you can just consider this shared vehicle like yours. If you need to cross the border with Modo, you can go to the US, no problem. And the primary reason why people use the service is because if you don't use your own car very often, you're likely going to save a lot of money by using car sharing instead. So it's really, the cost savings that people value most. And there are other aspects as well that can be high on the list, lower impact footprint on the environment, additional convenience. Maybe it's hard for you to access a parking space in your neighborhood, or it's expensive. But really, number one reason is that financially, it makes good sense for folks who don't drive a lot to share instead of owning their own car. We see that the users of round trip car sharing are pretty diverse. Our membership is very representative of the average population of the city of Vancouver, which has a fairly diverse population in terms of age. It's not just for young millennials, though millennials are not so young anymore. The Gen X, D, sorry. I don't know what's after millennials, I'm getting mixed up. But we see a lot of seniors, we see a lot of young families, immigrants, male, female, any type. The service area, and that's, I think, the really important aspect for folks to understand, is that car sharing is the product of an environment that is conducive for walking, cycling, and using public transit. It is very much a mode of transportation that makes good sense and can thrive when people living in the area really don't need to drive a car that often. If you live in a small hamlet in the middle of nowhere and you need to drive every time you need to leave your place, it is very likely that car sharing is not going to be really advantageous compared to using your own car. And in terms of impacts, I can provide the sources if you're interested. These are the things that we're looking for. We are co-op on Modo. We want to serve the needs of our members, but we also want to transform communities in a positive way. And I think these 4 impacts are the most important when you think about, okay, what can I do for my community? I think that Modo, through its work, is contributing to that. So what we've seen, or has been shown through peer review research, is that vehicle kilometer travel by individuals that use car sharing go down up to 67% compared to average population that is primarily vehicle dependent. And so this is really that folks that do car share tend to drive less than folks who own a car. Another thing is that vehicle ownership decreases significantly, and this was observed in a study made using Modo data, primarily from Metro Vancouver, where average vehicle ownership dropped by 47%. And what was interesting is that it was a big drop, but initially, the folks using Modo had already way less car than the average population. Again, it was on average before joining, they had 0.6 vehicles per household. And then after, it was close to 0.3. So for every 3 households using Modo, they only had 1 privately owned vehicle. So you can think about, folks like this, what's their impact on the neighborhood? They're not using as much on-street parking space. They're not contributing to congestion as much. They're not contributing to pollution as much. So even if you don't car share, encouraging your neighbors to car share if they can is a good thing. And then last, GHG emissions. And that's up to 55%, again, using data from Modo. And that's due to a lot of different things. The fact that people drive less, the fact that we have vehicles with smaller engines that are more efficient, the fact that people do smarter trips. They're combining errands. So they try to have only 1 vehicle trip instead of multiple ones to run multiple errands. So that's really a very quick summary of car sharing. And there are a lot of implications for car sharing to thrive in an environment. If you look at the bullet point that is service area, you can quickly understand that advocating simply for more car sharing is often not the best way to get more shared vehicles on the road or in the neighborhood. Very often, what's needed first is to advocate for more complete, compact communities where people within a 5-minute walk or a 5-minute bike ride or a short bus ride where you're not going to wait for the bus forever is going to allow you to do all the trips, run all the errands, conduct a normal life, maybe go to work, bring the kids to school without the need to drive. And when you're able to create such community, then car sharing becomes a really, really strong value proposition for more people than those on the fringes who may be the hardcore eco warriors or folks who just simply don't have the means to afford a car. It's going to be people who can afford a car, but realize that it just doesn't make good sense for them to spend that much money or go through the hassle of dealing with the ownership of the vehicle. All right. I'm quickly going to look at additional questions that have been added. All right. All right. I will try to answer a little bit more about Modo specifically in Nanaimo. And as you may know, before Modo was the Nanaimo Car Share Co-op. And before that, I believe that Modo was operating in Nanaimo. And so Modo is not really new to the city. It's a long history. It's not a history that is, very linear. And right now we have 8 vehicles in the city in seven different locations, including a couple of vehicles that are close to the ferry, which allow folks visiting from other parts of BC to travel without their own vehicle, hop in a Modo, and then do whatever they have to do in the area. We have in total about 700 vehicles. Most of them are in Vancouver. And so Nanaimo is very much a small, very, very small nascent network for us that we are trying to solidify. And that means really densify initially, and then we will expand on the perimeter. And we hope that over time we will be able to have a lot more vehicles available to a lot more people throughout the city. And one of the ways that we can achieve that is by simply advocating for our members and elected officials and city staff to really think about what are some of these fundamentals for car sharing to thrive? And that's always make your city more bike friendly, build homes where people are going to be able to, work nearby, get the kids to school without commuting in the car, and then make it safe for people to be in the street and walk. So these are very simple things, but they take a lot of resource and time to achieve. And so as the municipalities make progress on these different items, we try to support these changes by placing vehicles, but it can be the chicken. It can be the egg before the chicken, really. We're the egg, we're the product of this environment. Kurt, I will answer your question about how we are promoting Modo in Nanaimo. Tonight is a bit of a promotional event, I would say. I think that what has allowed Modo over its almost 25 years of existence to grow and to prosper despite hard times, and last year was a challenging one, is that people are deeply involved. As a co-op, we have member owners who really believe in Modo's purpose, which is to transform communities by connecting people in a way that is affordable, convenient, inclusive, and sustainable. And so these are really what's guiding the co-op, and people rallied around this purpose, and they share that with their friends, their network. And we see that word of mouth is the number one way that people actually are attracted to Modo. We also do other things like events like tonight. We do some advertising, public transit, and social media, but really having a human connection with someone that has been exposed to Modo or a Modo employee is very often what's going to have someone, start thinking, oh, maybe actually I could benefit from car sharing. I don't really need that car that I use only once a week. So that's the way that we do it. There are a couple questions that I think are pretty connected regarding fuel efficient cars on the road and Modo's plans for electrification. I don't know how I'm doing, Bill, with time, but you can interrupt me if I'm already a little past. Or
you're not past. I think you said a 15-20 minute presentation, sure, followed by questions and answers.
Yeah.
As long as people, you want to stay and people want to stay, that's good.
Okay, good. Yeah, the electrification piece is pretty important, and I think it's kind of top of mind for many of us and for politicians. So I think there are a couple important things for us as a mobility provider to try to remind people, is that simply moving everybody that is currently driving an internal combustion engine into an electric vehicle, but keeping things, as they are today, let's say business as usual, where most folks are, commuting 15 minutes, 20 minutes alone in a vehicle that is 2,000 kilos, is not the solution for a sustainable future. We're gonna need cars. It's much better if they're electric, but we need cars that are better utilized. And right now we see that on average, vehicles are used only 5% of the time. So that means that we have very expensive, highly depreciated assets that are really poorly used. And to make it worse, in many municipalities, these appliances, they are parked on the streets, which tends to be increasingly valuable, and the municipality in exchange of that gets nothing. So car sharing intends to address some of these issues. The first one is trying to have people better utilize these assets and share the cost, including depreciating cost. folks that do car share, they pay when they use the service, they pay a fee for the time they use and the distance, or it's a bundle of the two. So you really just pay for what you use. So number one goal, in our opinion, is to shift as many people as possible from one car to per individual, per household, to sharing more vehicles. Making them electric, absolutely. Though it's a pretty significant challenge right now. The first one is on the cost side, because if we look at total cost of ownership between a small hybrid vehicle like a Prius C, or even just a regular size Prius compared to an electric equivalent, total cost of ownership for the electric one still much higher. And so when we're looking at affordability, it is very difficult to get to the same point. So one thing that we would like to see is incentives from federal and provincial governments for fleet owners, operators of car share that allow for total cost of operations to get closer to the internal combustion engine, so we can make the shift without passing the cost really to the end user, and we can really keep it as affordable as it is today, and hopefully in the future more affordable. Something else that we're trying to achieve with car sharing is better use of space, because all these cars, they take a lot of space, whether they're parked on the street or they're parked in your wherever you live, either a detached home or an apartment building, condo building. It's taking a lot of valuable space, and we know how precious the land is where we live. And we think that if we're able to take off some vehicles from the road, we are able to free up some space in communities, not just on the road when there's traffic, but just generally in the streets. If you have less vehicles, you don't need as many parking spaces, and that means that you're going to be able to rethink how you could better use this space. And we see in some municipalities where they've really made a push to get vehicles away. We see safer biking infrastructure. We see community gardens. We see areas for kids to play with businesses. We see places where you can have terraces and seating. And I think that, it may be difficult to go through this change initially, but the result tend to be a lot more people focused, and generally individuals enjoy this a lot more than a parking space. So, Bill, interrupt me.
Do you wish to stop sharing? If you're just
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can see you all, but I don't know if
yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to show more slides, that's good. But if you're...
I will stop sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I should be done with the sharing. I had a lot of slides, but then I realized, you know what? I'm not gonna have everybody fall asleep at 7 p.m. So less slides. But Bill, I will give you the slide deck. And if some folks want to have a look at it,
that's good.
They can. And it tells you some of Modo's strategic themes, and a few of the things that I think are not necessarily aligned with what some of the folks are interested in taking away from tonight's conversation, but can be still interesting. So there was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a few questions that people sent in. Yeah. And I can kind of alternate. Some of them you've kind of already addressed, but I can ask one of them and then alternate until I'm done with them.
Okay, I tend to speak a lot and not do a lot of breaks, so just interrupt me.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, somebody wanted to know the difference between car sharing and carpooling. I can answer that, but perhaps I'll get you to answer it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it may sound trivial and I think that we should never underestimate how important it is to be clear with semantic. And I'm ESL. I'm coming from France, and sometimes it's challenging when I think I know what someone is talking about, but in fact I have no idea. And it's really important when we're talking about shared mobility or transportation to be clear. There are three things I think that we need to distinguish: is car sharing, carpooling, and then ride hailing. So car sharing is when you simply have multiple people that are sharing the use of a car, and this tends to be at different times. So you're gonna rent a vehicle for an hour, you're done, and then your neighbor is gonna rent a car for 6 hours, and then they're done, and then somebody else will. So go on and so forth. Carpooling is when you have several individuals that are sharing a journey in a vehicle together or part of this journey. So for instance, you can carpool to work or whatever. If you're going to the mainland, you can carpool with there's individuals in a vehicle that is yours or that you rented maybe with Modo. And so we see services that allow folks to meet together on a platform, share their point of origin, destination, they indicate when they're interested in leaving, and then they get together and then they share the cost of the trip. So that's a way for folks to increase occupancy in their vehicle or in others' vehicle. And so if there were more people carpooling in municipalities, well, you would see a lot less vehicles in the morning where there's only one person that is in the driver's seat. And so if you have two people instead of one, then you divide by 2 the number of vehicles, and you can imagine what it would do on traffic. So hopefully carpooling is something that after the pandemic can become something that we talk about again. Modo has an initiative with TransLink where motor vehicles are used for carpooling. In fact, it's a pilot. It's used by folks working at UBC. And it's really helping workers for whom transit is not feasible because too many connections because of the start of their shift. So instead, there are motor vehicles that they use to get to work. And one driver is designated, they're going to pick up the other folks in their group, get to work. During the day, the motor vehicle is available for folks to book by the hour. At the end of the day, it has been booked already for them. They go back home, and then in the evening and weekends, the motor vehicle lives there and other folks can share it, and it's going to be already pre-booked for the next working day. So it's a way to really maximize utilization of the car, and that's something that could be beneficial to various communities on the island, provided that BC Transit is interested in getting involved in this. The last one was a ride hailing. And so that is very much a taxi service where the company operating the platform doesn't own the vehicle. It's the driver that owns its vehicle. But it's very much a form of taxi. And in the general public, this is what folks called ride sharing. But historically, ride sharing was very much carpooling, and ride hailing was taxi services.
Okay, I don't see any hands up, so I've got another question here that got sent in. It's a kind of a two-parter. I guess they're curious how many electric vehicles you have in your fleet. I know you have
How many?
at least one, and I thought I read you also have a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have I think we have maybe 15 electric vehicles out of 700. That's very, very little. We have a lot more hybrid vehicles, just, basic hybrids. It is probably close to a third now. We intend to accelerate our shift or transition to electric vehicles, but we have to do this in a way that makes good sense. Charging infrastructure is a big challenge. We need a place to charge the car. We wanted to buy a lot of electric cars in 2021, but COVID disrupted our plans. And it also disrupted a lot of plans that municipalities had to install chargers. So we hope that once the pandemic is over, or at least less disruptive, that auto manufacturers are back to more steady business, because right now there are a lot of disruptions. We hope that we're going to be able to source electric vehicles more easily, and that municipalities and other property owners will be able to make charging stations available so that we can really invest more heavily in electric cars. Right now, we have a soft target to be 100% EV by 2030. We know it's going to be difficult to achieve, but right now we're setting the bar really high, I would say. And it's almost to put a bit of fire under the seat of some of the folks who we're working with, to have them understand that we are serious and that they have to do what's within their power to help us get there. Hydrogen, you want me to tell you? We have a couple of hydrogen vehicles as well. Yeah. It's interesting for us to test this. It's interesting to see how members adapt to hydrogen vehicles. So it's simply a car in which you have a tank, and instead of putting gasoline, you put liquefied hydrogen, high pressure hydrogen, and then the hydrogen through a chemical reaction is just transformed into electricity, and then the byproduct is water. So there's water coming out of the tailpipe instead of toxic fumes. And we have a few. It's very interesting, but distribution of hydrogen is a big challenge right now.
Yeah.
Not many stations.
Yes, and I should say that a couple of years ago, well, maybe it was only a year ago, because we've only had our electric EV charging stations since then. I contacted Modo to see if there was an interest. We have 2 level 2 chargers at Pacific Gardens. And I think the difficulty was that they were in the main part of the parking lot, not out in the driveway where the Modo car is.
Access is important as well. As you can imagine, when you're operating a car sharing service, we need to, well, at least Modo is trying to be as inclusive as possible. And so that means having parking locations that are accessible 24/7 to all the members, that feel safe, that can be easy to access for people with different level of abilities, or, imagine someone with, children. It has to be convenient for everyone. So there are challenges. And also, a few years ago, we didn't have electric vehicles with 400 kilometers that were relatively affordable. You could buy a Tesla, but that was kind of it. Since we have vehicles that are $40,000, with which you can do realistically 350, 400 kilometers if you drive in a meaningful or mindful way, it has completely shifted people's perception of EVs, and people don't run away from electric cars anymore. In our fleets, they're very well used. People really like to drive them, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, and I think another issue, and it's kind of the reason why there are no electric taxi cabs, is that it's not quite as acute with taxi cabs because you're trying to drive them all the time, and it takes time to charge.
Yeah.
And you have to build that around the scheduling of how the cars are going to be used.
Yeah. Yeah, someone at Modo always says car sharing and electric vehicles are two different solutions to the same problem, which is, what do you do when you yourself are not driving the vehicle? Well, with an EV, you're charging it, and with car sharing, somebody else is using the car. So you have to find a way to reconcile the two. We will get there. We think that there is a path forward, but it's going to require a lot of efforts, not just from Modo, from a few other folks as well.
Oh, and Kurt is asking what your 15 electric cars does that include plug-in hybrids or just all electric?
Probably we have the technically electric vehicle that we have in Nanaimo is a plug-in hybrid. Technically is considered electric, and we count them as electric as well, just so we follow everyone's standards. We have a few electric plug-in hybrid, pardon me, but we think that it is an interesting solution for the transition, but we don't think that long term this is the type of vehicle that Modo will be using. We think that battery electric is viable. There are situations, applications where it may make sense, because we're dependent on the charger with an electric car, right? If the charger is down, it's very much like if today all the gas stations were closed, and how are we going to deal with the charger not working is by having the car plugged elsewhere. And so if we don't have a high density of backup chargers in the community, a PHEV could make good sense.
Yeah, the other thing is the number of level 3 chargers and the charging rate as well, both in terms of what the car can accept and the charging rate of the charger.
Yeah, that's all these things will evolve. Hopefully DC fast charging becomes something that is available throughout communities, just like gas stations today. We'll have to see how much time folks are willing to wait in the vehicle when it's charging. Today, Modo asks members to refuel the vehicle to return the vehicle with at least a quarter of a tank. And we pay for the gas, but they still have to stop at the gas station and spend their time fueling the vehicle. And we see that some folks are not so keen to do that. They sometimes just put 5 liters of gas just to make sure that they're above a quarter, but they don't want to spend an extra minute or two to get the vehicle the way to have a full tank. So will they be willing to wait 8, 12, 15 minutes at a DC fast charger? To be seen. Maybe we will need ways to incentivize them.
Okay, I do have a question from Kurt about, is asking about a brief outline of how and under what criteria Modo works with developers.
Right.
And there might be one Modo developer-sponsored vehicle in Nanaimo now.
Yes. So
sorry, Sylvain, if I can jump in here. My apologies, Bill, too. We did have a question that I think ties into this, where someone was asking about just in their strata, just saying that
I was going to ask that afterwards.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if this is something that could be related together, perhaps. So
it could be. The question I have from somebody else is that they live in a strata with 100+ units. And what is the process to explore having a couple of car share vehicles at their strata?
Yeah, if you could talk about that, Sylvain, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll talk about the individual who was interested in the process. send an email to Modo, info@modo.coop, and we will ask a few questions, and we will assess if the location is of interest. We have a very mathematic approach to vehicle location. I think this is part of Modo's success, is that we know where to place vehicles so they can be well used. And what weighs strongest in this equation or model is existing members. So if you want to see a Modo in your neighborhood, and currently the closest Modo is 10-15 minutes away, the best thing that you can do to get a vehicle in your neighborhood is to go through the pain. And I'm saying this with a smile because I know it's not an ideal solution. And, probably a lot of people wish that it was different, but that's the reality, is that we look at the number of active members in the community. And so if there are active members that are going through the effort of going further away than they would like to get a car, most folks are willing to walk 5 minutes. We know that more than 5 minutes, we only get a few, but vast majority willing to walk 5 minutes. And so when we see individuals in the neighborhood that are active using the service despite not having a car, this is for us an indicator. This is weighing really highly. Okay, we need to place a car there, otherwise we're going to lose them. They made an effort, now it's our turn. And so one thing that they can do is consider car sharing, joining, using it. Otherwise, it may take their neighbors and the rest of the community to use car sharing before we can place a vehicle on their property.
Yeah, with 100+ units, if they only get a reasonable percentage of those to sign up and start using Modo cars, that'd be a good argument in their favor.
That's correct. A way to kind of jumpstart that often is to get the real estate developers and the municipality involved prior to construction of the building, and that's to solve the chicken and egg problem very often. Because when we place a vehicle in the new community or on the perimeter, there's always a risk that the vehicle is going to be underutilized, that we're not going to be able to recoup operating costs. In other words, that the car is not going to be able to pay for itself. And so long-term, this is not financially viable. So what municipalities, Modo, and developers have been doing for more than a decade now is to work on a solution that allows everyone to reach their objectives. Municipalities, they want more people to move away from owning a car and not using it, and when they use it, use it alone. So they really want, most of them really want to encourage more folks to take the bus, walk, cycle, and they know that car sharing should help them to make this proposition more enticing. So they've been telling developers, hey, if you invest in car sharing by providing some money, parking spaces, or other incentives to car share operators, in exchange, we're going to allow you to build a few less parking spaces. And we know that you're not going to need these parking spaces anyway, because folks car sharing don't own as many vehicles. So instead of providing maybe 150 parking spaces for 100 units, you only provide 140, right? Or 145. And in exchange, we want you to facilitate the provision of a shared vehicle. And if the developer, or when the developers are providing a financial contribution to Modo, this can go against some losses initially. So that means that we can take more risk and provide a vehicle in an area where otherwise on our own, we would not have done it because the financial risk was too high. So this is giving us some time to build up the membership, and maybe for the individual that was interested in having some Modo cars, that gives them a reason to use car sharing, because now, the car is at their doorstep. So this is something that could have worked for them if the developer of the building would have worked with us in the city to provide this amenity right from the get-go.
I dare say that you could work with a developer to provide, to help cooperate on providing electric vehicle charging infrastructure too.
Yeah, and that's part of the current requirements.
Yes,
Every,
actually, that's in the zoning requirements, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, and more municipalities, that's part of the requirements for residential parking spaces. But for Modo specifically, now when we're looking at these collaborations with developers, some of the requirements when it comes to the parking spaces, some of the construction standards, the construction standards include the provision of a level 2 charging station. And very often now we are providing electric vehicles. So this year, just to give you a sense, we anticipate to provide about 40 vehicles through these collaborations with the developers, and probably a quarter will be electric. So they will add to the 15 electric vehicles in the Modo fleet, but maybe it will be delayed to 2022. It seems to be difficult these days to get electric vehicles. There have been a lot of recalls and a lot of challenges. So we only have really just the Hyundai Kona electric as our choice, and they're not readily available. So hopefully we can have more electric vehicles coming to some folks moving in their new home or renting an apartment.
I have a question from somebody in the Comox Valley who couldn't attend, and I guess it's the same process. They want to start from scratch. The Comox Valley is about 45,000 urban and 20,000 rural, and I guess the idea is for them just to get in touch with you as well.
Yeah, so I'm sure you have friends who live in elsewhere on the island where Modo is not available. What we've seen after amalgamating with the Victoria Car Share Co-op in 2016, I believe, after having the Kelowna Car Share Co-op transition its asset and members to Modo, and the same thing really happening with Nanaimo. What we've seen is that to start car sharing in the smaller community, it's probably more work than at a big one. And it's not just about pouring money, which as a co-op, we can't really just do like a big, firm like Uber or whatever. We don't have venture capital. It's just the members who own the business and capitalize the business. What we see is that very often it's folks on the ground who have the knowledge, who have the network, who have some skin in the game, who can make the difference. And for car sharing to take some roots and then flourish, it is often a grassroots organization that is going to be able to make it happen. You need folks on the ground who have the municipality on board, who have some property owners on board, who have some businesses on board, and you just need a small core of individuals that are motivated. And the magic number to start is 3 cars. That's it. You don't need 20. You just need a small node of 3 vehicles that are all easily accessible within a 5-minute walk. So imagine maybe you spread them as a triangle, and you make sure that around or within you have your core group of users. Ideally, it's the municipality, so they can lead by example, and the individuals that are going to be more likely to car share because they live in an area where they don't need to drive. And you have a few other businesses who are willing to, make a meaningful contribution to their community by using car sharing instead of, using a corporate vehicle or paying mileage, like reimbursing mileage to some of their employees. And this is really how Modo started in Vancouver, like that. And we think that other communities can do just the same thing, but us at a distance, it's not working. We're happy to help them with some of the expertise, with the software. We have a software that we develop in-house, that we own, and that we can lease at a very, very low cost, no cost for very small organizations, just to help them car share. If they're a like-minded organization, it is most likely that we'll be very, very happy to help them get up and running by having setting them up with the software. And again, for the folks in Comox Valley, you don't need a super high-tech solution. I know now, convenience is everything. Everybody wants everything on the smartphone. But you know what? To get in a motor car, you still use a fob. Why? Because we know that there are a lot of people who don't have a smartphone with data. We know there are a lot of people who are still calling us to make a booking, but they also like to speak to a real human on the phone that they know, and that sometimes helps them when they have a problem. So we have to not exclude with technology. We have to try to make the service more convenient, but also give an option for folks to still participate, even if they are not equipped. So Comox, they could try if they want. We would be happy to talk to them.
Okay, I've got a question from Sam. What would you say is the next step for getting, or the best way perhaps, of getting more people using Modo and Nanaimo?
There are a couple of things. You can simplify this with carrots and sticks. So you can think about a few sticks and a few carrots. I think that the two have to work together. The carrots would be for Modo to provide more vehicles in the area. Obviously, if you have to walk only a few minutes and you have multiple vehicles close to you, you're going to be a lot more likely to use the service than if it's only a car that is a kilometer away. So this is something that we have to do. We can be encouraged and incentivized to do it by having municipalities provide, good parking spaces at affordable rates. Same thing for property owners, having EV charging infrastructure provided. That's also enticing. On the stick side, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a stick, but it's really have the city encourage people, find ways for people to become less dependent on driving a vehicle. And so if the municipality invests, as I said earlier, in cycling infrastructure, safe streets, is going to help. And we think that this is expensive. Transitioning away from the current model is expensive. When we talk about climate change, it's going to cost us a lot of money to minimize the harm, but the cost of inaction is much higher. And so I think that with car sharing and just like generally moving around the city is the same thing. We're going to need money to change things for the better. And I think that we need to start getting some money from some of these consumption behaviors that we want to disincentivize. So if now to park your car in the streets, it's no longer free, but you pay a very modest annual parking permit to the city, then all the money that they raise through this parking permit minus the admin cost is money that can be reinvested in solutions, right? So now you have a bit of money to do things, and then slowly you can crank up. So slowly you can crank up the dial once people come to appreciate that, you know what, the street is a precious asset, and it doesn't make sense for us as a community to make this asset available for free for me to park my appliance. And this is going to be needed. Some people view this as a stick. I personally view this as a carrot, but this is going to be an integral piece. how do we treat some of these behaviors that we know long-term are going to be a hindrance to get to where we want? So that is, I think, a big piece of the solution. And that was just an example. The parking permit, that's just one example. There are many other things that we can think about.
And the development phase too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
dwellings.
it has to be done in a phased way, equitable way, but it has to produce change. You can't, it's not just powder to look pretty.
Okay, Kurt would just like you to confirm that a Nanaimo resident Modo member can use a Modo anywhere.
Correct.
Victoria,
Yes.
yeah.
Correct. Yes. Yes. And it is very intentional that Modo has vehicles at ferry terminals, Sunshine Coast, Shorts Bay, Dawson, Horseshoe Bay, in Nanaimo. I think it's Departure Bay. I can't remember which one.
Probably Departure Bay.
Yeah,
I don't think there's one at Duke Point.
Yeah, no. Yeah. There's a question from Virat. Is that how I pronounce the name? Your name?
Yeah, that's correct. Virat.
Okay, Virat. Does Modo face any indirect or maybe direct resistance from cab companies? No. Reality is that we serve different type of trips, and people who car share tend to use taxis more because they will be less tempted to drive to the restaurant, and so after a nice dinner and a bottle of wine, maybe they'll be mindful and they'll take a taxi home. Maybe they carpool there with friends or take the bus, and then they take the taxi back home. There another form of car sharing that is available in Vancouver and Victoria that is called one-way car sharing. It's operated by Evo, and that's very much a drive it yourself taxi. You pick up the vehicle at one location, you drop it elsewhere. It is very convenient if you're looking for a taxi-like trip, which could also be done maybe with a bus. What we do, what Evo does, is very complementary, but has very different impact in terms of land use, GHG emission, ownership reduction. If you were looking at the impact compared to Modo, you would probably be very surprised. They have an impact that is a positive impact that is a lot smaller, and it's because of the type of trips they serve and how people tend to use one-way car sharing as an alternative to public transit instead of a complement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvain. Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands up aside from somebody's icon or picture. If not, then I think we could thank Sylvain for his time. It's been quite informative, particularly the question and answer session. And for the rest of you, we can just stay tuned for the next session in the series that we haven't, I don't believe we've scheduled it yet. Yes, thanks so much, Sylvain.
Thanks to you. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. Always nice to discuss with the folks I had not had the chance to meet before. And well, maybe we'll cross path again. Is that how we say it? In real, hoping that, I don't know if you had in-person sessions like this in the past, but maybe there'll be another one on transportation, and we'll be happy to attend again.
We haven't had in-person sessions yet because we started up in within COVID. but
Okay. Well, you see, it tells you a lot about me. I didn't look when you started, but it seems to be a much needed initiative. So hopefully you can continue strong.
Virat, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. It's so know what, like I'm part of the Nanaimo Climate Action Committee. Like we are really working on to reduce the climate change and help the environment. It's a Modo I really welcome, and I've been very closely working with Nanaimo Regional District and all the City Council. Pretty much full-time volunteering for making our Nanaimo and environment better. So great, a lot of good information you gave, and which I'm going to share with my people over here, like a lot of friends and various organizations I'm with. And thank you very much, and thank you for Bill to organize such a fantastic event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Yes. Have a good evening. Yeah.
Bye.